Welcome to The Critique. Today we're looking at a commentary from Chicks on the Right about Carrie Baller, her defense of Candace Owens, and a pretty chaotic commission meeting.
Yeah, this is a heavy one. Lots of theology, lots of politics. So let's just get right to work on how to make this argument land a little harder.
Okay, let's dive in. The first major area for improvement, I think, is about the balance between, real critique and just personal insult.
Right. The material undermines its own valid criticisms regarding antisemitism by relying way too heavily on personal insults and superficial mockery.
I mean, the core argument here is that Baller is hijacking Catholicism to push an extremist agenda? That's a huge, serious claim.
It is.
But then throughout the piece, the narrator keeps pivoting to attack her appearance or her past as a pageant queen. After one clip, she just says, "Yeah, you crazy bitch whore."
And that's the problem, isn't it? That kind of language. It raises a question of credibility. If we're supposed to believe this person is a genuine theological threat.
Does calling her names help the case?
It hurts it. It absolutely hurts it. The risk here is that you immediately hand the moral high ground back to the person you're criticizing. It lets them just say, see, they have no real argument. They're just being mean.
And the actual point, the one about her contradictory stance on Zionism, it just gets buried.
It gets completely buried under the weight of that personal attack.
Okay, so I see what you're saying. The goal is to expose the behavior, but the insults are just a distraction. So how do we strengthen this? What's the suggestion?
I think we need to reframe the critique to focus strictly on the contradictions in her statements and the specific danger of her platform, not her personhood.
Elevate the argument.
Exactly. Let the evidence speak louder than the commentary.
Okay, let's get concrete. You mentioned the pageant girl comment.
Right. The script says, she was a pageant girl, I don't care about pageant. It just feels so dismissive and not really relevant.
So how do you make it relevant?
Well, a stronger way to put it would be to focus on why that background makes her unqualified for this specific role. You could say something like, her entire public background is in performance and pageantry, yet she's on a religious liberties commission with no demonstrated record in theology or constitutional law.
Ah, see, that stings more because it's about competence, not a hobby. It's a credentials check.
Exactly.
What about the comment about Candace Owens? She blows all the sunshine up her butt.
It's colorful, sure, but it sounds like gossip. To make it a stronger political critique, you could describe the echo chamber.
Okay.
Something like, Prejean isn't just supporting Owens. She's operating in a closed feedback loop where Owens' most controversial assertions go completely unchallenged. That describes the mechanism, which is way more damning.
And then that final one, the bitch horror comment after the Seth Dillon clip?
That was the most jarring part. Seth Dillon's rebuttal in that clip is so calm and logical.
It is.
So when the host jumps in with that slur, it actually steps on his point. The fix is so simple. Just let the clip breathe. Let Dillon's calm rebuttal stand on its own as the evidence.
And then just follow it up with something like,
Dillon's response highlights exactly how baseless the accusation was. That's it. It makes the host sound like the adult in the room, not, another participant in the mudslinging.
It's about trusting the audience to see the contrast for themselves. You don't need to label.
You really don't.
Okay, moving on. Let's talk about the organization of the whole piece. Critique point 2. There's a real struggle here with narrative focus.
That's putting it mildly. The current structure suffers from pinballing, where serious theological discussions are cut with, total trivialities. The listener just loses the thread.
It's a roller coaster. You start with this serious definition of candy Catholics, which is a theological point. Then, boom, pageant history. Then Trump. Then suddenly we're in a hair product ad.
And you come back from the ad to a super serious transcript reading about Israel. Then you jump to Megyn Kelly. And then you end with how to pronounce Prince's raspberry beret.
It is a lot. And I wonder, have we thought about how that pacing affects the gravity of the main accusation?
Well, that's the whole point, isn't it? We're talking about antisemitism. I mean, that's one of the most serious charges you can make in political discourse.
And you sandwich it between hair serum and a Prince lyric joke?
Exactly. It basically tells the audience, this anti-Semitism thing, just another item on our gossip list today. It totally trivializes the very point you're trying to make.
Right. The lack of prioritization makes everything feel lighter than it should. So what's the fix? How do we approach this structural problem?
My advice is to group the content into thematic buckets. We have to stop the pinballing. I'd suggest 4 distinct sections. Something like the theological argument, then the commission incident, then the media landscape, and then at the end, the lighter note.
Okay, so let's apply that. How would you rearrange the pieces we have?
First, you take the definition of Candy Catholics and all that context about Christ is King, and you put it right next to the analysis of that Seth Dillon transcript.
So you link the theory to the evidence.
Yes, right now they're separated by an ad and the Trump stuff. Put them together. The listener gets, here's what this group believes, and here's a video of them doing it. It's a clear 1-2 punch.
That's a much stronger flow. What about the Megyn Kelly segment and the ad read?
The ad read, it has to go somewhere. But you place the Megyn Kelly critique right after the Candace Owens stuff. It shows the ripple effect.
Oh, that makes sense.
Candace does X, Prejean supports X, Megyn Kelly refuses to condemn X. That's a narrative. You can't break that arc with an ad for hair serum. It just kills all the momentum.
And the Prince segment? The Green Beret versus Raspberry Beret thing?
It's funny, but it's a huge distraction in the middle of a political takedown. I'd move that whole segment to the very end as a distinct palate cleanser. Finish the serious work, and then say, and on a lighter note, before we go.
Right, it respects the gravity of the main topic. Okay, let's move to our third lens, clarity of context. The hosts are clearly knowledgeable, but there's a risk there.
Yes, the material assumes a level of insider knowledge that could really alienate listeners who aren't following every single feud.
The Charlie and Hamptons narrative really stood out. The text says Charlie Kirk at the Hamptons, then later after Charlie died, and mentions a murder plot. Now, I follow this stuff pretty closely, and even I had to pause.
Charlie Kirk is very much alive.
Right, so a casual listener is thinking, wait, who died? There's a murder investigation? How is Seth Dillon in a murder plot? It's incredibly confusing.
It is, and the host almost certainly just misspoke, but it was never corrected. And then there's the defense that it was all a nothing burger. Well, you can't tell your audience it's a nothing burger if they don't even know what the something was supposed to be.
You're asking them to trust your conclusion without giving them the premise.
Precisely. So the suggestion here is just to use bridge sentences. Quick, simple explanations to contextualize this deep lore for a broader audience.
Okay, let's script one. How do we fix the Hamptons confusion?
Before you play that clip of Prejean questioning Seth Dillon, the host just needs one sentence. Something like, for context, Candace Owens had previously accused Seth Dillon of lying about a private meeting they had in the Hamptons. Done. That's all you need. It anchors the listener.
And the Charlie died line? That's a big one.
That needs an immediate flag. You either edit it out or you clarify it on the spot. If she meant after Charlie and Candace's professional relationship died, then she needs to say that. You can't just leave after Charlie died hanging in the air.
It just sends the listeners straight to Google instead of keeping them with you.
Totally. And there was the mention of the Texas guy, Dan Patrick.
Oh, right. She fumbles for his name.
Yeah, and never really explains why he mattered. So the concrete fix is, when you mention Dan Patrick, take a second to explain why his inability to control the meeting is significant. Say, this is the Lieutenant Governor of Texas, a very powerful official, and even he couldn't control this outburst.
So that turns a verbal fumble into a strong point about Prejean's unruliness.
Exactly.
Excellent. Okay, final critique point. This one is about tone calibration and really who the target audience is.
This is so crucial. The us versus them vernacular creates a barrier that prevents the material from persuading the very people it claims it wants to warn, the normal Catholics.
There's a very sharp line drawn. You have normal Catholics, like the host's mother, and then the candy Catholics who have bought into the crazy. And the intention is clearly to separate the institution from this fringe group, but the tone is just so aggressive.
It is. It frames the candy Catholics as villains to be mocked, not as, misguided people to be won over. And so you have to ask, what's the risk there?
Well, the risk is you just turn them off completely.
Right. If I'm a listener on the fence, maybe I follow Candace Owens, but I'm also a devout Catholic, and I hear you call me part of a cult that buys anti-Semitic bullshit, my walls just go straight up. I'm not thinking, oh, they have a point. I'm thinking they hate me.
So the goal has to be persuasion, not just rallying your own base.
If the goal is truly to expose this behavior to protect the church, you have to invite people in. So I'd recommend adopting a tone of concern rather than just disdain. Frame these people as victims of a grift, not willing accomplices to crazy.
How does that actually look in practice? Let's take that phrase, say, incredibly anti-Semitic bullshit. How do you reframe it?
It's high-friction language. So instead, you could try something like, these individuals may believe they are defending the faith, but they are unknowingly adopting anti-Semitic tropes that actually contradict church teachings. See the difference?
Yeah, one calls them idiots, the other offers them an off-ramp. It says, you've been tricked, not you are bad.
It's a subtle shift, but it's powerful. And there was that moment about the flag pin Prejean wore, an American and a Palestinian flag. The host just says, shocker. It moves on.
As if it's just typical lunacy.
Right, but shocker is dismissive. A more persuasive argument would be to frame it as an example of how political contrarianism is overriding coherent philosophy. You could say, it's startling to see a conservative activist wearing a Palestinian flag, which suggests that for this movement, being anti-establishment is now more important than traditional conservative alliances.
That's an actual intellectual critique that someone could chew on, rather than just feeling mocked.
It moves the conversation from high school gossip to political analysis.
Which is really the through line for all of our feedback today, isn't it? This material has all the right instincts. It sees a problem, it has the evidence.
And the passion.
But it keeps tripping over its own desire to be mean or entertaining.
Exactly.
Okay, so to recap the feedback for our listener, we have 4 main things to address to take this script from a rant to a really robust critique.
First, elevate the argumentation. Get rid of the bitch, whore, and pageant girl stuff. It hurts you. It doesn't help you. Let the evidence, like that Seth Dillon transcript, do all the heavy lifting.
Second, fix the structure. Stop the pinballing. Group your themes logically so the serious accusations actually carry the weight they deserve.
Third, clarify the context for your listeners. Don't assume everyone knows about the Hamptons or who Charlie is. And please, clarify that Charlie Kirk is not, in fact, dead.
And finally, calibrate that tone. If you want to persuade normal Catholics, you have to speak to them with concern, not just disdain. Give them an off-ramp, not an insult.
There's a really strong piece of commentary hidden inside the script. It just needs to be chiseled out from under all the layers of snark.
We would genuinely love to see where you take this. Once you've had a chance to work on these edits, please submit the script back to us. We'd be fascinated to see how the argument evolves.
Absolutely. It's an important topic, and with a bit more discipline, it could be incredibly effective.
That does it for this edition of The Critique. Keep writing, keep refining, and we'll see you next time.